Welcome to the Body Talks with Vera, where we dive deep into movement, strength, and joy at every size. I'm Vera, your host, and each episode we're having real conversations with people who are redefining fitness, confidence, and what it means to truly live in our bodies. Whether we're talking powerlifting, nutrition, running ultramarathons, or radical self love, this is a space where every body has a story. So let's get into it. Today, I am so excited to introduce our guest, Julianna Mazzei, aka Jewelz Journey of Journey Mental Health Network. She is a longtime body positive advocate, former plus size model, and a registered psychotherapist qualifying, dedicated to promoting mental health and supporting people on their journey. Hello and welcome, Julianna.
Hello. Hi, Vera. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm so delighted to be here and talk to you everything about mental health, body positivity, and just life in general.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, why don't we go right into the first question? I would love to kind of know a little bit about your backstory. How did your journey as a body positive advocate and plus size model begin? And how did it involve in, or maybe even lead you into becoming a registered psychotherapist?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And really, just, I don't know where the start was. One day I woke up and I was tired of hating myself. I was tired of, like trying the same thing on a million times and not wanting to leave the house. Um, I started to see like bigger people and bigger bodies, like kind of living their life. Like I remember I once saw this photo of a model and I was like, wow, like, like they're just out there like living their life and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. And I thought about like, why not me?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I basically started my journey just from, being like just living, like, and that's kind of my phrase. Like, I stopped surviving and I started living.
Right. Yeah.
Every day was just so much better. And, I would just like, I wore a bathing suit and nobody died. Like, I went out to the pool, I wore a bathing suit, nobody died. I took a cute photo in it and I posted on Instagram and people started to gravitate towards it. And, I continued to kind of spread my message of just like, I'm done hating myself. Like, here I am. And
Yeah.
people really loved it. And slowly, but kind of not slowly, it like turned into this thing. And people were like finding inspiration from me. I then found modeling. Like a friend had asked me, they were like, hey, do you want to like come model for this thing? And I said, sure. Like I never modeled before in my life. I never saw people like me modeling. So I never thought
Mhm.
it was an option at all.
Yeah, definitely. I would have never, especially, yeah, growing up in the Y2K era. No.
No. Yeah, I just did not see people like me on runways, in magazines, or even just modeling. So the
Yeah.
idea to me was like a little bit daunting, but I did it. And when I did it, I realized that I could continue, like, it was a great way to continue to inspire people.
Yeah.
And that's really why I did it. Like,
Mhm.
the modeling was fun. It was great when I did it. But really, I did it to kind of gain more reach into just spreading my message of body positivity and self love. I didn't love being in makeup and hair for like 3 hours. Like that
Yeah.
part of the job, like I did not love.
Yeah.
I loved what it was doing for people. And every
Mm.
day I was getting messages from individuals saying, like, hey, like, I bought a bathing suit because of you, or, I wore that dress to my family's party because of you.
Mm. Yeah.
And it changed my life, like to be able to reach out to people like that.
Oh, I love that. That I think is so great because, so many people need that messaging. So I'm so happy you were able to bring that to so many people. Like you do have a large Instagram and just an online presence really. And I think that's so great. And I'm curious, like, did modeling shape your perspective on your body image, on your confidence or self-worth?
I think that at the time when I started modeling, I was completely in love with myself. And I mean, like I'd like to think that I still am today.
Yeah.
And being in love with yourself doesn't mean that, every single moment of every day you love everything about yourself, but ultimately it means you accept yourself. And so I think that because I entered at such a pivotal time of my, self-esteem being so high, it
Mhm.
just gave me more self-esteem. Like
Yeah.
even though the industry can be pretty toxic, and even in the plus size modeling world, like I'll tell you, like there was still so much. toxic around body image and being the right kind of curvy and what
Mm.
brands you're working with. And so it was kind of a toxic environment, but it made me feel really good. Seeing the photos, seeing the way that I can transform, putting myself out there in ways that I never would have. So even though there was a lot of toxic in the culture, it actually just enhanced my self-esteem like a lot more. Like I would suggest that anybody does a boudoir shoot in their life. Like whoever you are, whatever you do, like do that for yourself.
It's so amazing of how your confidence changes when you're working with a photographer who understands how you wanna be seen, and to show yourself in a light where you can truly, like, really just love yourself and see a way that, people see you that way, and maybe you just don't recognize it, but your body is gorgeous no matter how it looks, and doing, like, something like a boudoir shoot can really captivate that, which I love so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you like this kind of power within you that you have that nobody else can kind of take away.
Mhm, definitely. So I'm so curious because now you are a registered psychotherapist qualifying. What
Yeah.
kind of led you in towards that and get into that from, being someone who mostly posted about body positivity and being a plus size model and roller skating, which we'll talk a little bit about later. How did you get there?
Yeah, so it's been a journey for sure. Like, I started working with children and families like over a decade ago. And my undergrad was in like child development. So I'm really well-rounded in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
Mm, I always wanted to be there to support children, to support families and individuals in ways that I never had that as a kid. And I'm a firm believer that one good person can change like a child's life.
Oh, yeah.
So part of it was like wanting to, you know, like ultimately all I really wanted to do was support individuals.
Mhm.
And even now in my practice, like, you know, I've I've realized that like working with children was such a big passion of mine, but I no longer really like I still love that and I still like will do that, but it's
Yeah.
no longer what drives me. And I feel like it changed when I decided that I wanted to be there to support the person
Yeah.
so they can support other people around them. So like let's say a parent. Like let me go be this light in this parent's life so they can be there for their child instead of me being there for them because a child just needs their parent.
Yeah.
And then you add in all of these things that I've ever done in my life, and, I can't leave this community behind. Like,
Mhm.
there's a reason that, Jewel's journey stayed what it was. Like, there's no way I could just, completely disappear. And
Yeah.
although I've, like what's the word? I haven't, like, silenced myself, but I've reduced my presence in the community, I really wanted to make space for new people to come in and share their message. So whether they're new plus size models, they're new body positive activists, or people that care about the community. I really wanted to like I've had my time in that space and people
Mhm.
have heard me. And now
Yeah.
I want to hear from other people. And so really I kind of took a step back. But I was never gone and I'm not gone. And I think like that needs to be said for sure.
Yeah.
And how it relates into my psychotherapy practice, you know, like I said, I had like this whole children background, these families and stuff. But then I started like, just working with individuals. And a lot of the clients I get, like, they do struggle with addiction or body image. Like, that's one of my niches is like self esteem and body positivity. And it cannot be like when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, like, it has to be that.
Yeah. Especially because, like, you spent so much of your life and your online presence doing that. So I feel like it's like, that window open where it's like, of course you're gonna go through it. Like,
Yeah.
the door's locked anyways. We're gonna go through that window. We're gonna go into this. And I think that's such a beautiful way to also give back to the community, right? Like, to take what you've learned through your schooling and even just what you've learned in your life experiences.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that everything that I've done in my life has shaped me to who I am.
Yeah.
But the other thing with, like, how, like, modeling and how being an advocate has changed into being a psychotherapist, it's also my clients. Like, I have a client that's coming for, like, let's say, binge eating or, eating disorders in general or self-esteem or body issues. And, as these things come up, how can I not be that person there for you? So, it's even like grief, like being a counselor and we have somebody who's coming for anxiety, like grief is going to come up. We've all grieved. And I
Yeah.
feel like self-esteem is part of that. Like in a majority of the clients I see, there is some part of it that has to do with self-esteem. And so regardless if I wanted to give back, which I absolutely do, I feel like self-esteem is at the starting point of so much in therapy.
Mm. Yeah. And I think that really kind of goes well into my next question, which is how can people cultivate a sense of self-worth outside of their appearance? Because obviously, like in our society, appearance has a lot of weight to it, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's how it is. So, like, how can we work on our self-esteem and our self-worth and kind of remove the appearance aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And, when we say self esteem, that's exactly what people think about. They think about the external, like how they appear. But, like, the reality is, the self esteem impacts every part of your life. Like, it impacts the way you obviously feel about yourself, but it impacts how you treat other people, whether you'll ask for a promotion at work, show up to
Yeah.
that fitness class, like, everything is self esteem. And so to think about how, like, the role that it plays and how important it is, like, it's really it's at the moment. And now I forgot the question, so I need you to repeat it.
All good. I'm curious, like, how people, like, how can our listeners really cultivate that self-worth outside of their appearance?
So yeah, like with self-esteem being in everything that we do, applying for a job, putting ourselves out there, I think it's important to step away from that external factor, which is a hard thing to do because that's what we've all been wired to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to rewire the brain. Like we know that it takes time, it takes practice. I
Yeah.
think that diving in and practicing some of that gratitude, that self-worth talk, like that positive self-talk is
Mhm.
one of the ways to challenge that. Like we need to start when we meet somebody, we need to start sharing all the good things about us. And that
Yeah.
sounds weird because we grew up in a society where the only time you're allowed to like talk about how great you are is in a job interview.
Yeah. That's true, yeah.
Like that's the
I
only time you can sell yourself.
Yeah. I would love more almost like a show and tell where we can talk about ourselves and, like, hype ourselves up. I think we deserve that. We should be able to share our accomplishments and, the good things about us with either, our friends and family or even new people we're just meeting.
Yeah. Like self-esteem is more than just what we look like.
Mhm.
Like we need to share about like how like we finished that crochet project or how we showed up to that thing on time or whatever it is. And we really need to start changing the narrative of how we treat each other. And I think that's the big part of it. It starts
Mhm.
with us as individuals and how we accept other people. Like if we can have somebody come and toot their own horn and fish for that compliment, like let's give it to them. Like what does it cost you
Yeah.
to give that person that compliment? Like they obviously need it right now. And
Yeah.
so I think it's really about channeling everything that you have within you and focusing on the internal instead of the external.
I love that so much, yes. Like, we should be celebrating each other more, definitely. And just to kinda switch gears a little bit, I found you on Instagram a few years ago when we first connected, and I was so enamored by your roller skating skills. I was like, "Oh my goodness. This Jewel's Journey person killed it at the skate parks." What kinda got you into roller skating, and has it played a role in your mental health and body positivity journey?
Yeah, definitely a lot to say about that. So like roller skating started like the reason that I like for sure ended up doing it is because of Instagram. And I say that or let me rephrase that because of the Instagram algorithm. So I like started seeing people roller skating like the jam skating, like the dancing and I was like, "Holy shit, like this is so cool. Like this
Yeah.
is so cool." And I remember showing like my husband, I was like, "Yo, look at these things that these people are doing. Like look how cool it is." And for weeks upon weeks I was like seeing it and then Instagram, like the more you watch something, the more they show it to you.
Yeah.
So I remember lying in bed one night and I saw this video, like I'd seen a million of them, and then I just sat there and I was like, but why don't I do this? Like,
Yeah.
why not me? Like, why don't I just buy a pair of skates and learn how to do this?
Yeah.
And like, that's essentially what I did. Like, the next day I woke up, I went to the roller skate store and like I
Yeah.
bought roller skates.
I love it. Sometimes I'm not a huge fan of the algorithms, but sometimes they lead us to some beautiful places.
Yeah, like, we don't know where we're gonna end up, but it did lead me to a beautiful place, and, when I started, I thought that I would just be this dance skater, like, that's what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and then shortly into my skating journey, like, a month or 2 into it, there was, like, this meetup for, like, skaters at the skate park, and it
Mhm.
was supposed to be, like, this inclusive, like, body positive environment, and I was like, "Holy shit, like, I have to go to this," like,
Yeah.
it has my name written all over it.
Yeah.
Even though, like, I'm not a great skater yet, and I definitely can't, like, skate at the skate park, like, I went. And I fell in love with the skate park. I was like, "No," to jam skating, like, I still like it, but throwing myself down ramps and stuff is so much more dopamine than, doing whatever. So, yeah, I fell in love with it, and, yeah, like, to talk about how it has impacted me, like, self-esteem wise, like, I get a little bit serious because it is one of the first times in a long time that I had started feeling insecure again.
Mm,
And, like, I love roller skating, like, don't get me wrong, but there is something to say, like, with being the fat kid at the skate park.
yeah, for sure.
And, like, I'd even just, like, wanna say that again, like, being the fat kid at the skate park and, like, make space for that
Yeah.
and let people feel, like, what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, like, I do think being the fat kid in so many situations, right? Like, and I think, so many of us can relate to being that fat kid in gym class or the largest person at the dance studio. And it's almost, I don't wanna say a universal feeling, but so many of us, so many of us have dealt with it.
Yeah,
And it is a scary feeling when you're not sure how much you can trust the community you're in, especially if it's something new.
yeah,
And I I commend you and I applaud you for pushing through that to say, "You know what? I am insecure, but I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna keep going." Because I think that is such a hard thing to do because it is usually the safer and easier route to do is to step back and say, "You know what? This is not for me."
yeah,
But to say, "I'm gonna make my space here and, like, I'm gonna be seen here," is something really important.
yeah, like, 100%. It could have been so easy for me to just walk away from skating. I am the pressure to be good
Yeah.
'cause of my size was definitely a factor, like, at the beginning. Not that I, like, went out and practiced because of that, but,
Yeah.
like, when I would show up, I would, like, feel like, "God damn," like, like, "Oh god, I'm, like, the worst skater here," or whatever. And you have those moments. But because I didn't give up, it also leads me to, like, these other moments of, like, where I am pretty good now. Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
like, the best, and that's okay, and I don't plan to be, but I am pretty good.
Yeah.
And I fucking love going to the skate park and having people look at me and point and laugh before I start and then being like, "Oh, shit."
Yeah.
Um, and kind of redefining their standards of what a skater is supposed to look like.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, with fitness of all sorts and so many other things, there isn't a standard, but there's an assumed standard.
Yeah.
And we have to really, dismantle that in our brains to say, "No, like, there are various different sizes of bodies that can do all these badass things."
Yeah.
And roller skating is just one of them. And I think, seeing you go down those ramps scares me because I'm terrified of being on skates, to be honest. But
Yeah.
when I see you do it, I'm like, "Okay, but I know at least if I really tried and I really put in the work, I could do it," which I think is so important because, before I didn't really see many plus size skaters really at all. So, again, that would have been something in my brain that says, "Not for you. Don't do it. Don't try it." But you showing up and showing people on Instagram that, like, "Hey, I am in a bigger body and I am doing it and I'm being badass," gives that kind of hope and inspiration, not even just to roller skating, but other types of
Yeah.
movement too, which is great.
I completely agree. Just people being able, like, I've had messages from people being like, "I thought it was too big for this," or "What kind of skates do you have?" Like, and I had done my research. I was like, "Is this plate gonna hold my weight? Like, do I wanna jump?" on this little nylon plate? Like,
Yeah.
and the answer is no. But that doesn't mean that that plate wouldn't actually work for me. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with getting like, a titanium plate. Like we all do, like great skaters do that anyways.
Yeah.
So, there's options out there, just like in clothing stores. Like maybe that store doesn't have your size, but another store will. And being there for people to definitely see that they can do whatever they want and that there is no one type of body in one sport is such valuable stuff. And, when I started posting my roller skating videos, it really was for me. Like, I didn't even really post them on Instagram. I like made a whole new TikTok. I never had TikTok. I literally only made TikTok for roller skating.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
and then I started to get a little bit like, like I was like unlocking cool things. Like I remember the first time I did like a transition, I was like, oh my God, like I worked on this for like a week. And I
Yeah,
started sharing it on my Jewelz journey page because I was like, this is, still me.
yeah. It's just, like, literally just a different facet of you, and I think that's so lovely because now you can show people not only, like, what it is to be body positive and to feel comfortable in your skin, but to feel comfortable in your skin and doing something that not everyone would consider you able to do. Like,
Yeah.
it really just, broadens people's horizons that much more.
Yeah. And I feel like I get that in life all the time.
Mm,
Um, I've always considered myself a very active person, like I just am. But people wouldn't guess that based off the way that I look. Like it's
yeah,
that immediate assumption that she's not. Like
yeah,
even recently, like the other day at work, like me and my friend, we would like do this thing where like, we like try to get each other last and like run away or whatever.
yeah.
And one of like the guys like at my work was like, wow, like you move really fast. And I was like, yeah,
Okay.
like, what does that mean? Like, why are
Yeah.
you so surprised that I can, like, go really
Yeah.
quickly? And so you challenge people's thinking and, I'm always gonna do it. And I do it in a way that's, like, approachable for people,
Mhm.
so they don't run away.
Yeah,
Because I think that we need to be advocates for this thing, but as soon as we start being like, "You did this," or "You should do that," like, people tune out and they stop listening. So it's
yeah.
all about our approach as well.
For sure, and I think that's definitely an aspect of being just, friendly even, right? Like, I understand there's some things people will not agree on, but I also believe that, with proper conversation and showing some empathy to the situation, we can potentially change people's minds on certain situations like this, where we can say, "Okay, just because this person's in a bigger body doesn't mean they can't do a headstand or something really cool." Like, we can show them, "Hey, there's this person, there's this person. Have you even seen this before?" Because a lot of times I find people who have this more narrow mindset is just because they haven't been exposed
Yeah.
to what is out there. And that's sometimes all they need. It's they need someone to show that there's someone in a different body than them doing something so cool. Like I
Y
know for myself, it's when I do the splits on TikTok, the amount of times I get comments after comments of, "I never knew a bigger person could do the splits."
yeah,
Like, yeah, of course they can. Of course they can, but also you've never seen that, so why would you because you're in that specific mindset of only thin people can do these types of things,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
I love
And,
it.
that makes me think of when I started roller skating, I never thought that it wasn't an option. Like, I
Mm,
never thought that, like, "Oh, I can't do this." I like,
yeah.
when I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna do this," there wasn't a thought in my mind that was like, "You can't do this." And maybe
Mm,
that's because, like, I've always been able to do the things that I've wanted to do, and I mean, that sounds like a little bit, like, extreme, but I've never, like I've never had my body really hold me back in ways.
mm,
So, like, when it came to roller skating, I didn't think that it would hold me back, and I didn't have that thought.
yeah,
I remember, like, a couple years ago, like, scaling this wall, like, kind of rock climbing, like, down to this waterfall thing, and I had, like, this one last push to go up, and, like, then I would be at the top, and, like, looking down, I was like, "Okay, I definitely can't go back down."
yeah,
Um, and I'm holding on to this, like, tree in the roots, and I was like, "Oh my god, is this tree gonna, like, hold my weight?" And, I remember getting up there though being like, "Oh my gosh, my body did that, like, I can do hard things." And I think after that moment, like, I never and finding body positivity in general, I never thought that I couldn't do it. And,
mm,
following incredible people online, like, fat girl, like Courtney from the States, like, she's a roller skater, she does amazing things, like, underbelly yoga, like, Jasmine, like, she does amazing things. And I feel like I followed all of these, like, athletic people in bigger bodies for so long that I never thought that I couldn't do it.
Oh, that's so lovely, and it really shows how important it is to have a diverse social media feed of people in different bodies doing these cool ass things.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, then maybe you would have had that more negative thought of, "I maybe can't do this," or "I'm not able to," but you were able to set yourself up for success in that way, and I don't think it's something you would have even realized when you started following these people.
Yeah.
But now it brings you to a spot of, "No, like, I know I can. I know I can," and that's the confidence we really need for a lot of these things is the ability just to know we can do it.
Exactly. And like it's with yourself as well, like you and your whole brand that you put out there every single day that, lets people show up exactly how they are for who they are without trying to change them. And, letting them know and showing them that their body can do wicked things. Like having like people like you on my feed, it's a constant reminder every day. And I think that it's exactly what you're saying. Like sometimes when we are these people putting ourselves out there, we don't realize the impact that we're having, but being able to see you in your space or Jasmine in her space or Courtney in her space, like it's so impactful. Sometimes I think we forget that as
Yeah.
like influencers, like creators of making space for people.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, I see that. Just to kind of move back to what you're doing now as a mental health professional and on social media, how do you navigate social media both as, a body positive advocate and also as a mental health professional?
It's a really great question. I don't know. Like the reality is that I feel like I've been navigating this Jewelz journey. Like I'm like Hannah Montana. Like I'm Jewelz and I'm Julianna. And who am I showing up as today?
Yeah.
I think it's always been tricky. Like working with children and families, like my Instagram was always a little bit problematic, I guess, is the word to use. So how I navigate between both, it's how I've navigated the whole entire time, and it's really just being me. And if you don't like it, like just don't tune in. I try to be as authentic as I can. You'll never really, and I say this today as a full face of makeup, but like, you don't usually ever see me
Yeah.
like, dolled up, like I come as I am. I'm not gonna throw on a whole outfit or like do my hair and makeup to make a quick video about talking about A, B, or C. I try to keep it consistent, but at the end of the day, I really just post what I want. And even when it comes to working with brands, like I don't work with brands that I don't want to work with. Like I just don't
Yeah.
care. Like I don't care about the money. I don't care about these things. And if I did, I probably would have been a little bit more famous a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the reality is I was never gonna sell out. I'm not gonna sell out now. I wasn't gonna sell out then. And the way that I balance is just to show up as me. Like I show up as me in my session with my clients. Like this is what you get. Of
Yeah.
course, that doesn't mean like, you're struggling with depression. It's a hard session and the feelings are high that I'm like laughing and giddy. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna meet you where you're at. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna be me. Like I'm not a robot. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what sets me apart a lot. Like people want to work with a human being, not a robot.
Yeah, definitely. Especially now in the age of AI, where you see it's like there's no personality, there's no like it's very hard edges. There's no softness to it. And I think that's what we need more than ever, especially in our current climate and society. Like we need those soft edges. We need that humanness to kind of shine through. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How can someone start healing from fitness or diet culture trauma? Because I do think a lot of us have dealt with it or maybe are still dealing it. So what are some first steps we could maybe be taking towards healing ourselves?
Yeah, this is such a valuable question, and I think it's different for everybody. Ultimately, a lot of these things are ingrained in us. It's what we know. It's what we've always known, and it's what's still being pushed today. It's not like the narrative has changed.
Yeah.
Even with the body positive movement, like in 2016, like it was huge. It was
Yeah.
huge to be like everybody was body positive at that time, and we've even changed the language. Like now we move into body like neutral, right? We've changed the platform, and I think it's because it had this wave and then it dropped. And I think when it dropped, a lot of people went back into, and maybe they hadn't left either, that like negative self state. that I'm not good enough state. We stopped seeing representation. Like what happened to in 2018, we're seeing plus size models on runways, and like now we're not again. And we're seeing like, people with exceptionalities on runways, and we're not seeing that again now. It was like this hot craze that came in. And so the reality is that we're not healed. And
Mhm.
that little taste of equality, that little taste of what the world could look like was so good.
Yeah.
But then it was, like, ripped all away, and I
Mhm.
think it left people suffering a lot more because, like, we thought that things were gonna change, and then they just didn't. And so people struggling, with that toxic diet culture or that negative self-image, it starts with yourself. And I always say, and I'll say it again, and we'll probably say it like 3 or 4 times, like, I got tired of just surviving in this world. And I really, like I got to a point where I wasn't gonna make it, like, in the sense that I couldn't go on like that anymore. And so I
Mhm.
really had to just, like, stop surviving and start living, and I think it takes baby steps. You're
Yeah.
not gonna love yourself overnight, everything that you have and everything that you are. But, like, that faking it until you make it matters.
Yeah.
And practicing those self-affirmations. And it can start with, like, "Okay, I'm smart." Like, I know that I'm smart. Okay, I'm smart.
Yeah.
Start with that. Like, start with something that you believe in and add in a couple extra fillers that you want to believe in.
Yeah.
And so I tell everybody, like, practice that positive self-talk. Follow different people online. Like, if you're into social media, really, like, don't just see what the algorithm's showing you. Like, there are so many inspiring people out there. There's also so many amazing books, like Healthy at Every Size. I have a bunch over here too, like the Body Posy Panda one. Like there are so many great books that can help people that are struggling
Yeah.
with their body, with diet culture. I think it starts with, just wanting to take control of your life and playing by your own rules.
Yes. Playing by your own rules, I think, is so important because we're so conditioned to play by someone else's rules, and that's society's rules, and they're not necessarily correct. And to, follow your own path is so important, and I think so healing once you start following it and start like trusting yourself to go down that path.
Yeah. And everybody is a little bit different. Like everybody's approach is going to be a little bit different. Take what you need and leave the rest. Like just take what you need from it.
Definitely. Definitely. So, what does body liberation mean to you today versus what it meant to you when you first discovered body positivity in the sense of you just realizing you couldn't live like this anymore and you had to just start living? What kind of shifted, would you say, over the years?
Yeah. I'll actually like pivot on this a little bit to explain better how far I've come.
Mm.
So I feel like when I first started loving myself, getting into body positivity, I was really like, if somebody talked about a diet near me, like I was like I will come at you.
Yeah.
And being a therapist now, and it happened before that, but I think that's why I'm not such a great therapist, but this is why I do this is why I do well. I don't know how to frame this, but I think what I'm trying to say is why it makes me a good fit to be a therapist is that I've changed from that. Like a couple years ago when I first got into body positivity and was finding body liberation and self-love, you couldn't talk about weight loss around me. You couldn't talk about diet around me. You couldn't talk about talk about your body negative around me. And I'm not like that anymore. I meet people where the hell they're at.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you to not diet. I'm not going to tell you that that's not good for you. I'm certainly not going to tell you that I think you should do it and it's a good job and like give you a thumbs up, but I'm going to make space for you to share what you need to share. If this is what you're battling, like this is what you're battling. So I feel like it hasn't changed in the sense of I know that I'm allowed to love myself at a size 2, a size 22. It hasn't changed the way that I feel about myself day to day, but it has changed my tolerance of, what body positivity really is. And body positivity doesn't mean that, you don't struggle with an eating disorder. Body positivity doesn't mean that you don't struggle with, working out. Like, I accept you for who you are. Of course, I'm not gonna sit there and bask in the new diet that you're talking about, but I've even seen it with friends in my life. Like, they've started to share a little bit more where they've told me where they felt like, before I felt like I couldn't talk to you about this because you
Okay.
were so, like, anti all of it. And now
Mhm.
I just, like, accept people for where they're at. I understand how you got there for sure, because like, we've all got there, like,
Yeah.
hating ourselves or getting stuck on this diet trend, the next diet trend. And
Yeah.
now I just, like, show you unconditional positive regard, and I'm gonna support you in whatever way you need me to support you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think it's so important. And I'm so excited to just kind of witness you throughout this new journey being a therapist because it's so important to hold space for people. Because I can definitely relate when I first started kind of my own body journey, where it was, yeah, if you talked about weight loss to me or dieting, I did not want to hear it. I would leave the room. I would like close the chat immediately. It was not happening. But now it's, yeah, it's holding space like, you know what? If you wanna do that, that's your body, it's your choice,
Yeah.
and if you wanna talk about it, you know what? I have the capacity to right now, so I will hold that space for you, and I think that's so important, and I wish more people did that too even.
Yeah. 100%, and I'm not like, you obviously know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you facilitate this place that's, like, open and safe for people to come into, but we also have to meet them where they're at. Like,
Yeah.
clients don't wanna hear that, well, you healthy, like, have you ever heard of healthy at all size? Like, a client struggling with body image and an eating disorder, like, they don't need to hear about healthy at every size at that moment. That doesn't mean that it'll never come into our practice, but
Yeah.
like, being a professional means, like, leaving our opinions at the door. And just
True.
because I wouldn't do that diet, or because I don't support diet culture, doesn't mean that I can't be understanding of you. And I think that that's real growth. And there's like, I wish that I was the way that I was 10 years ago. And exactly what I said about, like, educating other people, like, getting into their face and telling them, like, "Don't support diets, like, that's gonna," like,
Yeah.
that's not helping anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to keep that space open because then if we're closing people off, then they're going to fall further into potentially diet culture or something that could be toxic or negative to them. And we need to have space because, maybe what they're doing, we don't know their reasoning for, which, most cases we don't know their reasoning for doing things. And, if we don't have space open, we'll never know. We can never have an open conversation, that candid conversation we need to say, okay, like, you know what? If that's what you wanna do, amazing. If you also wanna hear about this in the time in the future some point, I'm there for you, but, whatever path you go, I'm gonna support you still. Like,
Yeah.
you're still a friend to me, you're still a colleague to me, you're still a family member to me, like, we're still gonna hold space for someone in our community no matter what direction they end up choosing.
100%, 100%. I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Juliana, so much for joining me today. If people want to learn more about you and work with you, where can they find you?
So as always, you guys can find me on Instagram at Jewelz.journey on Instagram. You can also check out my website, Journey Mental Health Network. There's no way I was going to start a business without having the name Journey in it. If you guys know me, even in my bio, I had to drop a journey. It is what it is. And I've always called it a journey. And I'm super excited for this next chapter and where it's going to take me. If you would love to connect, reach out, whether it's questions or you want to book a consult, which is always free. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time that is best for you.
Amazing. Thank you. And I will be having all that in our show notes down below. And one final question for you. What is one affirmation you would like us to practice today to show some kindness to our bodies?
And so, like, it has to be the third time is a charm. Like, stop surviving and start living today. And, it might not seem that that is an affirmation for your body, but knowing what I've shared with you in this podcast, like, you'll know that it is. So I challenge you guys to just stop surviving and start living, because we've only got one life. And you're not going to care what you look like when you're 80 years old. As long as you can get to where you want to go, you feel good, like, that's what's going to matter.
So stop surviving, start living. That is beautiful. Thank you again, Juliana, for joining in this lovely conversation on the Body Talks. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Remember to drink some water, do something kind for your body today, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.